Yeah, the adhan, actually, alhamdulillah, this is, I'm doing this purposely to embarrass him. This is our own beloved Muhammad, the husband of our beloved sister Tia. And he has a wonderful, beautiful voice he let me record him one day, actually at Middle Ground. And it's actually my favorite adhan to play. So I have it uploaded on my phone and whatnot. So may Allah reward him and bless him for his beautiful voice. Okay, Bismillah. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So, I won't take up much of your time. I know that the first day of fasting is, hard, and you probably want to try to get to the Isha, inshallah, as early as possible. I'm going to mute a few folks just for the time being so that we can focus and get through this, and then inshallah we will take your questions as we get to the end of it. So I'm going to, since we kind of did the first juz'ah last night, I want to go now to the second part, right? And I don't know if you had an opportunity to read through the link, but sometimes you hear these words, juz'ah and whatnot. The Qur'an, at one point, for the purpose of studying, was divvied up by the ulama into something called ajaza, which is the plural, of which we use the singular juz'a, which just means a portion or a piece of. And it was mainly done for the purposes of studying and to help facilitate memorization. It doesn't have anything, it's not divided at points for any other reason than that. And this was something that was done in the post-revelation period. So Surah Al-Baqarah as a whole, which as you'll notice, it comprises over 2 juz'ah of the Qur'an. It's a very large surah of the Qur'an. And a lot of the stories that we read or the passages that we read in this chapter of the Qur'an, they deal a lot with previous religious communities, in particular Bani Israel. And there's a lot of qasas, a lot of stories in Surah Al-Baqarah that deal with Bani Israel. They run the range of telling us about, some of it even goes before Bani Israel. So it touches briefly on the story of Adam, on his creation and his time in the garden, their expulsion from paradise. And then it goes and spends a while talking about Bani Israel. They were the ones who, called upon Allah to liberate them from Fir'aun, their chastiser, and then how essentially they turned their backs on the favor that was bestowed to them. And that's a warning for us as well to take the favors that Allah gives us seriously. And in fact, we're in a time right now where most of us can easily reflect or contemplate on something that Allah has blessed us with that we are not able to indulge or partake in. So we should, inshallah, we should try to be not like Bani Israel, take the warning of the Qur'an and thank Allah for the blessings that we have and do our best. We will always make our mistakes, but do our best, inshallah, to be steadfast and to be truthful with Him. And also, along with the stories of Bani Israel that you read, do not use religion other than what its purpose is to show us not only how to live, but you could say how to live and how to die. The purpose of religion is to show us how to live and how to please Allah, and inshallah, how to go to His garden and how to avoid the fire. And therefore, don't use religion as a tool or means of coercion. Don't mix religion with politics and so on. So we learn about how they betrayed the favor of Allah with the cow, which is what the surah is named after. That time and time again they harassed the various messengers that were sent to them. So it's also in a kind of reverse way teaching us how we should act towards the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with a sense of deference and respect. It tells us about the dangers of obsessive questioning, that it's good to question to confirm something so that we know what's right from wrong, but you can even take that to an extreme, and that we should focus not so much on trying to wiggle our way out of things, right, but accepting whatever that Allah has decreed for us and doing our best to implement that in our lives. It also teaches a lot about how to get along together as a religious community. One of the issues that Bani Israel had was also they had a lot of own infighting, that they competed with one another, they fought with one another, sometimes even coming to murder and violence. And that is something we should definitely take a warning from, that we should try our best to get along. We should try our best to put our differences aside and recognize each other as not only brothers and sisters in Islam, but we are all ibadallah, we are all the creation of Allah. Along with that, it shows us that even if you have Allah's favor and you have all of His blessings, that you will also have trials and tribulations. We talked about some of that today in the khutbah. We talked about how part of Allah's promise is that He will undoubtedly test us with the loss of wealth and life. These are things that we can essentially count on as a part of what this life is going to be about, and that no amount of piety is going to save us from going through difficulty. So just like now, we should try to focus on and be appreciative of what we have and not what we are missing, so that inshallah when this does pass, we are not like the passage that Allah relates in several parts of the Qur'an. For instance, in the 10th chapter in Surah Yunus, Allah talks about the kind of person that when they are at sea, وَجَاءَهُ الْمَوْجُ مِنْ كُلِّ مَكَانٍ, right, and the waves crash in upon them, دَعْوَ اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ لَوْ أَنْجَيْتَ مِنْ هَذِهِ لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الشَّاكِرِينَ. These are the kind of individuals that when they are caught in the midst of a hardship, they call upon Allah to save them from it, and they pledge allegiance to Him, that if He would just save them from this, they will be the most grateful and the most obedient. Unfortunately, when it has been removed from them, they go on about their way and they go back to their old bad habits. So while we are in this issue of quarantine and COVID-19, we should think about, well, boy, it's such a shame I can't go to the masjid. How often did we really go before, or whatever that it was? I would love to give this in charity or do that, right? So while we are, I actually encouraged a person the other day to maybe keep a Ramadan journal this year, if for no other reason that it's a very unusual Ramadan. And when you're having those feelings of I wish I could A, and I wish I could B, and I wish I could C, or I would do X, Y, and Z, write it all down so that you can hold yourself accountable, as a reminder in the way that on the Day of Judgment, a very similar book will be given to us, and it will be presented to us, and it will be read to us, and there will be no arguing with its arbiter. Write all those things down, and then inshallah, when all of this passes, try to hold yourself accountable to those things that you pledged you would do if you had the opportunity. So I've recommended to a number of people to keep a Ramadan little log or something like that, so that inshallah you and I can both increase our ikhlas and our sincerity towards Allah. So moving towards the second juz'ah now of the Qur'an, and of course now fully into the middle of Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah then takes a turn and He begins to address not only Bani Israel, but He also begins to just address people in general, taking some time to reassert that Allah is one and is not many, and that is pointing out that it's actually their parents or their ancestors were the ones that corrupted what was at once Tawheed, what was once the oneness of Allah. And it shows the tenuous relationship that religion, that Islam in specific, will have with culture. And sometimes we often think of Islam often through a very cultural lens or in a cultural framework. Case in point, like the Taraweeh Prayer, while certainly not cultural, the way that we perform it is very cultural in that we tend to, many people, they pray Isha at home and then they rush to the masjid to pray at Taraweeh, which is actually precisely the opposite of the way that the Prophet ﷺ is, that actually they would really make sure they were in the masjid for the fara'id, for the mandatory prayers, and then they would actually go home to pray these extra prayers like at Taraweeh. They would pray it right in their homes. So this part of the Qur'an also goes through and addresses some of the challenges that come when religion becomes predominant amongst a particular group of people, that they can begin to blur the line between religion and culture, and that we should always try and strive to keep those distinct. And then Allah touches upon the dietary guides, and what it does, it actually helps to connect Islam to the Sharia, or to particularly to the Tanzil of Musa alayhi salam to Moses. So in this way, the Prophet ﷺ is seen as somebody who is, while bringing a new revelation and making some changes, he is also showing that the Prophet ﷺ is also still adhering, right, to the Sharia, or to the rules that were given to Musa alayhi salam, confirming that the Deenul Anbiya kana deenuhum deenan wahidan, right, that the deen, that the religion of all of the Anbiya was Islam. It was all the same. And then the part that inshallah we will talk about a little bit tonight. Let me just pull up my verse here that inshallah we can talk about tonight. So one of the things about there's a beautiful verse actually when you get to the it's the 200 and about the 204th verse of Surah Al-Baqarah, and I'll read the Arabic and then we'll talk about a little bit of the background and why it's important. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن الناس من يعجبك قوله في الحياة الدنيا ويشهد الله على ما في قلبه وهو الدار الخيام وهو ألد الخصام. Right, that Allah says that, you know, among the people there are some that their words in this life, they will dazzle you, right? ومن الناس من يعجبك قوله في الحياة الدنيا, that their words will astound you. They will say such wonderful things that you will think that they're the best of people, they are best of creation, that they are so religious and so pious. وَيُشْهِدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا فِي قَلْبِهِ. And the amazing part is that then they even will try to present what they say and what they do as if God himself, as if Allah himself subhanahu wa ta'ala approves of what is in their heart. وَيُشْهِدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا فِي قَلْبِهِ وَهُوَ أَلَدُّ الْخِصَامِ. But in reality, they are أَلَدُّ الْخِصَامِ. They are the most ardent enemy of Allah and of religion. And Allah says, وَإِذَا تَوَلَّى سَعَى فِي الْأَرْضِ لِيُفْسِدَ فِيهَا وَيُهْلِكُ الْحَرْثَ وَالنَّسَلَ وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْفَسَادِ. And that in fact, right, and we'll get into the particular of the verse here, they said when this kind of person is not in your presence, وَإِذَا تَوَلَّى سَعَى فِي الْأَرْضِ, they go about in the earth and what? They لِيُفْسِدَ فِيهَا, they cause all kinds of corruption and destruction in the earth. وَيُهْلِكُ الْحَرْثَ وَالنَّسَلَ. Right, and that even to the point that they destroy crops and animals and so on. Wallahu la yuhibbu al-fasad. And Allah does not love corruption and fasad. Now, the particulars behind this is actually very interesting, and there's a good lesson in it for us. So there was a man who was from the Mushrikeen. His name was Akhnas ibn Shariq al-Thaqafi from Banu Thaqif, and he heard of the message of Islam. And he heard about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he came to Medina, and he wanted to meet the Prophet because he just was kind of excited about it. But at the same time, he wanted to as we would say today, throw his own shade on it. He wanted to show up to impart his blessings, so to speak. So he shows up and he has such wonderful flowery speech, and the way he's dressed and the way he acts, to the point that the Prophet ﷺ is even kind of impressed with his words. He's like, well, this dude is all right, sounds pretty good. And then the second ayah, the 205th ayah, where Allah says, وَإِذَا تَوَلَّى سَعَى فِي الْأَرْضِ لِيُفْسِدَ فِيهَا وَيُهْلِكُ الْحَرْثَ, right? That he leaves and goes off, and people saw that when he departed from them, he went off in the countryside, and when he would see people that maybe had their animals out grazing in pasture, he would come and actually lop off one of their limbs, unbelievable animal cruelty. And this is a person that claims to have some love and affiliation for Islam and the Prophet ﷺ. And one of the lessons for us certainly is today that I see a tendency amongst some Muslims today to want to be liked and to be admired by everybody. And we love it particularly if there's a celebrity who, it's usually some rumor that doesn't prove to be true, secretly becomes a Muslim, or they were seen reading the Qur'an, or they were seen in a Muslim country, and then there's all this inference that's associated with, oh, they must be this, right? And yet when you see these people, when they are away from the Qur'an, away from the Muslims, away from the Muslim country, we see exactly what they do. And therefore we have to be careful about what الناس من يعجبنا قوله في الحياة الدنيا. We have to be careful about people whose appearance and whose words seem fair to us, because one, it's flattery. We all love flattery. It's a human tendency. And the Prophet ﷺ, who was of course the wisest of men, was even himself was a little bit fooled by this, which is why the revelation came down, because Allah was able to see something about this man that even the Prophet ﷺ in all of his hikmah could not read and could not see. And therefore we should be discerning with this desire to want to be liked and to want to have our deen affirmed by others who in the end are not even really one of us to begin with. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't have good, positive relations with non-Muslims. Everybody in my family is non-Muslim, so I love my family. But if, for instance, if my parents, inshallah, may Allah guide them, if my parents were to become Muslim, I would be happy for them as what it means for them in the hereafter. I would not be happy because, oh wow, Islam must now be true because mom and dad also became Muslim. I would undoubtedly be happy, right? Or, there was, it's in Australia, so I don't follow Australian sports, but apparently a few days ago or not long ago, a very famous either New Zealander or Australian footballer converted to Islam. And I get it. It's exciting to see somebody that you admire, that's popular. I'm sure that, I haven't had it to me personally, but I can understand how that kind of thing might be really exciting. But at the end of the day, the truths of Islam stand on their own and do not need external verification by any created thing. They do, and for us, we should really focus on, instead of always looking to have some flattery, we should be looking to explain and show, as we said today, that we are the wasata, that we should be shuhada ala nas. We should be the witnesses of what this religion truthfully is to people. Inshallah, they make up their own decision, and it's between them and Allah. If they become Muslim, alhamdulillah. If they don't, alhamdulillah. Their affairs with Allah. We should not get into the trap of being fooled by people's, simply by their flowery speech. And we should also carefully examine their actions. We've seen this happen many, many times, again, with politicians that will come to the Muslim community and they will talk a kind of Islamese, right, and a sort of Muslimese, and we will get very excited about them, and then we will see them turn around and their behavior is reprehensible, right? So just keep this in mind and look for these hints and look for these clues when, inshallah, when you're reading and doing your qira'ah, doing your reading this month. Take your time. I know we talk a lot about a juz a day. Don't become obsessed with that. It's not about how much you read. It's about how you read it and the closeness with which you read it, so that you can, inshallah, try to really delve and get into the messages that are contained therein. So that was just two verses, the 204th and the 205th verse from Surah Al-Baqarah. Inshallah, maybe you will get to that point. If you're not there already, you will come across it. Inshallah, you can just make a note of this, but something definitely to keep in mind. I wanted to open up, since we have a few minutes left. Good night, inshallah, Lori. Get some sleep. I know it's getting late. I myself will be going to bed very, very shortly as well. Anybody have any questions? I thought I would open up to Q&A, either about this or anything else. If you have any questions, inshallah, we can open up. Or if not, you are obviously free to go do your Isha and turn in if you need to. I know that Fajr comes early. Cell phone mushaf, yes. So as I had mentioned before, holding the mushaf in your hand is permissible. This includes a phone or a tablet with a Qur'an app on it. The only dispensation that a number of the ulama are making, and I agree with, the difference between a mushaf is obviously a mushaf doesn't ring, it doesn't have your Twitter feed, it doesn't have your Instagram, it doesn't have all those other things, right? And when one is praying, in general, you should not be doing any other activity other than praying. The rukhsa that we get, that we saw that was allowed by the companions during the time of the Prophet ﷺ to read from it, obviously that was all they were doing and nothing else. So the bulk of the imams that have been telling people that it is permissible, the phone needs to be configured in such a way that it only functions like a mushaf, meaning that it's not going to ring, it's not going to get any tweets, it's not going to get any WhatsApp alerts, right? So if you're going to use your phone or tablet, configure it so that it's on some type of real deal do not disturb, not the masjid do not disturb that always somehow disturbs everybody, right? But the real deal do not disturb. Do I have to recite an entire juz'ah on every Taraweeh prayer? No. In fact, you can recite as little as much as you like. Part of that is from the ayah in the Qur'an and Surah Al-Mudaththir that recite as much as easy for you. So no, there is not any amount that you have to. And in fact, you don't even there's a difference of opinion on the number of raka'ah at Taraweeh prayer. 8 verses 22, or actually really, which is like, I guess, 11 verses 25. If you do the shafi'i wal witr, essentially your witr prayer, right? But at Taraweeh prayer is just qiyam al-layl or tahajjud. So if you want to do 8 and then just do one more, 9, and salam out, this is fine. If you want to pray all night long up until the time of Fajr, this is fine as well. But no, you do not have to recite. Matter of fact, there is no amount that is prescribed whatsoever. Just do whatever is easy and pleasing for you, inshallah, and may Allah accept. I presume you're all writing because, there we go. Here, I'll unmute everybody really quick towards the end. So if you want to ask questions, you can ask questions as well.